All right, 3.3 measures of central tendency and dispersion from grouped data. So we're going to look at, what happens when we have stuff grouped together, and how do we find central tendency and dispersion here, okay? So we can still find the means, we can still find our standard deviation, all those things, and so that's what we want to look at on those. So we have these, again, complicated formulas with these, and so we don't want to use those specifically. I'm going to show you how to use them on the calculator to make our life easier here in a little bit. We're just going to go through these slides, though, and look at a few of the things that we do need from them so that we can get that information, okay? All right, so let's suppose here that we have these fines here in New York City, okay? And so they're grouped in their classes by 25s on all those pieces, and we see the frequency of how many times they were getting fined that amount on those, okay? So the first thing that we want to do here, because we want to be able to put things into lists, whether we're using it by hand or whether we're using it by calculator, we need to get these things down to simpler numbers and know what we need to use, okay? And so the first thing that we want to do is find the class midpoint, all right? And so we can see right here on that we are doing just that, finding the class midpoint. So to find that, we are going to take, and we actually looked at this previously, we're going to take those two lower limits here, we're going to add them together and divide by 2 to create our midpoint for that first class. And then we would move to the next two and do the same thing with that all the way down. Again, remembering down here that this is 325. I don't write very well on the screen. It's 325 there on those, okay, to create those. And those are going to be our important pieces, okay? So when we get later on, this is going to be our L1, and this is going to go into L2 when we're looking on the calculator for those, okay? And so that's what we want to focus on there from those. All right, but let's kind of just go ahead again and just go through these slides and see what all we're going to look for, and then we're going to pick up the calculator on those, okay? All right, so these are all how to do it by hand. That's what they're doing there. So we're not going to get into those pieces, all right? All right, so let's tell you what, let's go back here. Let's look at our midpoint now. Again, we know what the answer is going to be there. Let's go ahead and find that mean. So in our calculator, we're going to go to L1 here, and we're going to put in those numbers, and then L2 is going to go our frequency, okay? So let's clear this off. We're going to go into stat. Number 1 there, we need to edit. I'm going to clear my list, so go up to L1, press clear, and enter. And then we need to put in all those numbers from the class midpoint, okay? It just takes us a little bit of time. It's just the way it goes here. Okay. All right, and so then we go over to L2, and we're going to put in our frequencies. Right, good. So those numbers lined up, so it means I didn't miss anything at least. I hopefully didn't type anything in wrong for those, okay? All right, now, based on the calculator, your next moves may look a little bit different. If you have an 84, and especially an updated 84, you may not have to do quite as much as I do. It may ask you some probing questions, and you might have already seen this before when you were doing these, okay, for these. Now, we're still going to go into stat here. We're still going to move over to calc. And we're still going to select number 1. Now, if you've got an updated 84 right here, it will ask you for your L1, your class, and then it'll ask for your frequency. And so frequency there needs to be L2. So you would type in L2 on that. So if you have one of those calculators and you have questions, can't quite figure that out, make sure that you come back and ask me later on, okay, for those. Now mine doesn't do that because I have an older 83, and so if you're one of those students, we're just going to put open parentheses. We need to do L1, comma L2. Now L1 you'll see right down here in yellow. That means you hit the yellow button and then this button to get L1, comma, and then L2 is here, so second L2, close my parentheses. Now we press enter, okay? All right, so now we look at our information. We see that the mean should be 182.5. Well, bam, right there at the top of ours, 182.5. So that calculator did that work for us right there for us, okay? So we have those pieces. All right, so we need to make sure that we're doing those things properly for those, okay? All right, now this is, again, just those formulas there with those pieces. So we want to be careful on those items. Now, we could still go back and do those here. We would break things down. You're going to have one of these type. So we want to be careful when we're plugging those things in for them. We have an A, B, and C on those. And so paying attention to what those things mean for those, okay? And so we look at the hours of class and then what is their frequency for those, okay? And so we can add those things up, and that's what we get for those, all right? And so we could break those things down for them. All right. Okay, so now standard deviation. Now again, they have the complicated formulas with those, but we're going to again let our calculator do the work for us. So it's the same problem, so that's why I haven't moved anything over there. But we go through and look at our pieces. And so we can see here that our S, because we're looking at a sample, is 54.163. Well, right up here, our S is 54.163 from that, okay? And so we would actually round that to dollars. I'd probably say 1/6 on those pieces. But we're able to pick that out right there from those, okay? So we're able to get our mean and our standard deviation right here from the screen. So we didn't have to make any changes there within that, okay? All right, and so the end here just kind of wraps up with those same things, so you can see, again, they use the calculator as well to verify some of those pieces on those, okay? And so we just always want to look for that information. So now we have that calculator to do our weighted mean. So when you have groups, things out there for that, you'll know what's going on there in 3.3.